Right. Doing a quick run through on my Scourge League, kind of pre-league, league starter-ish builds that I've put together for this league so far. Starting off with what I'm going to be trying to league start, which is a Volatile Dead, Detonate Dead, Spell Slinger Necromancer, which hopefully should be pretty revived from the mana reservation changes this league. I haven't done too extensive of looking into exactly how well this will function. Just gonna kind of be winging it, but I've got a bare bones setup put together that should work if I follow it, if it's functioning well. But yeah, it's traditional block Necromancer. This one's on, I believe, relatively outside of some damage on the wand, but I didn't even really set up damage calculation stuff. I just was making sure the proof of concept worked. Nothing super crazy on any of the gear. Hardly any block anywhere other than 5% spell block on the shield. And I don't think there's even a no, there's not even a block anoint in. And it's pretty close to cap on both, so getting to block cap shouldn't be too tough. And as you can see with the, you can probably and you can maybe sneak it in LE focus potentially in place of hypothermia. They are actually the same reservation now. I would probably go with LE focus in most cases. But either way, we have the 6 link there, a 3 link for the Desecrate, and there's mana to spare. There's not a lot of mana to spare, so mana sustain issues, since the triggered spells take mana, might be a pain to get going, at least if you get an early 6 link. The most likely way to solve it will be minus mana cost. Mods like a Replica Conqueror's Efficiency would be really good, otherwise some minus costs on the rings and the amulet. But as long as that part's manageable, it should be functional. And then other than that, yeah, it's kind of just the classic Volatile Dead, Detonate Dead, Spellslinger stuff. This setup in particular, I believe, currently has the Soul Tether in. So you would need some leech from like an amulet or maybe a ring, wherever really. Helps a lot with sustain. And with that Soul Tether in right now, it's sitting at about 6,500 life and just shy of 2,200 energy shield. This is a level 98 tree, which is higher than I usually shoot for these things, but it would probably just be a matter of like dropping a couple jewel sockets, maybe even a couple of stray life nodes early on. But for the setup in general, we're getting life ES since we're kind of going that route. We got an elemental cluster over here for the improved exposure mastery, which you would most likely get from Wave of Conviction and like a trigger weapon. And then minion damage stuff, some block here and there. Wand Slinger, which is actually just a decent cluster for the damage and attack speed. You don't need a ton of attack speed as Necromancer because you get a bunch from your Ascendancy. But this right here might be really helpful for early mana sustain. Just attack damage leeches life and mana. As long as you can get a wand with some flat like fire, which is something you want anyway. It could help a lot. If you end up not needing that, Unnerve on hit might be pretty good, even though Unnerve will not apply to your corpse explosion damage. It'll only apply to the spell portion. It should still be pretty decent. Either way, there's some good ones in there. This block set with the mana is really good. You get 5 mana regen with Arcane Surge, which is again going to help with that sustain. Then we've got the flat life on the life one, extra attack block on this shield one, increased life and reduced life recovery on this life one, which should be worth I believe. I mean, maybe if for some reason, if you didn't have leech, maybe you start thinking you really need sustain. The reservation mastery, this is kind of what brings it back, right? You get the regular reservation stuff here on sovereignty, and then another 15% efficiency, which is actually more than even sovereignty notables giving. So it's just a huge boost. And then spiritual aid, pretty much want to get this really early on. It's got offering effect on a mastery, which is incredibly powerful with the bone offering. Even though bone offering won't be giving life on block anymore, that is just more block chance for not much in the way of investing. And then we've got non-damaging ailment effect on this elemental one. That's for the shock and the chill that Necromancer provides. And the last mastery point is, you might need this, you might not. It'll depend on the setup probably, but if you want to go 100% ailment avoidance, you can get 20% there. It's really good. And then this currently has Ash, Frost, and Storm anointed. It's a relatively kind of cheap anoint with 2 crimson oils, LE damage, and again ailment effect, which is really good. But it's pretty bare bones tree and pretty straightforward, I think. And then just, yeah, Slinger. We got your Frenzy with Combustion. You'll have your trigger and your weapons with Bone Offering. I put an Arcane Surge in here. You could also put Arcane Surge on like your Flame Dash. And maybe put a third spell in here. I don't know what the third spell would be necessarily. I think we used to do like Orb of Storms or Stormbrain for extra Elemental Overload procs. But since that's been changed, that doesn't help you anymore. You can actually proc Arcane Surge off these triggers since they cost mana now. So it might be an easier way to just keep that up all the time. And yeah, pretty straightforward, very early setup. The plan prior to going Spell Slinger would be just Armageddon Brand and Cremation most likely. And then swap somewhere between Blood Aqueducts and maps most likely. And I'm going to be trying it. I'm going to be hoping it works out. Damage might be lacking early. We'll see. I don't really know. I didn't really look into the damage too much. But that's the first one. Second one is returning once again to a BEEFtain, aka Brutus Ledge Sprinkler Totem Chieftain build. And I wanted to see how much better this build was going to be this league, because Iron Will on the tree is kind of insane for it. You can get the Iron Will comboed with Battle Mage Cry, and you don't need the exert part of Battle Mage Cry. You don't need to trigger any spells, you're just using it for the buff, which makes your increases and reductions to spell damage apply to your attacks. So you stack strength, you get Iron Will, which makes you gain spell damage, and then you use Battle Mage Cry, which turns that spell damage back into extra attack damage. And it's kind of just more damage than before. I think I did some more tweaking around with this. It had, I want to say it was at 4 million total on the boss DPS at one point. This is with War Chief and Protector, which is the single target setup, and then for mapping you can do Consecrated Path with either War Chief or Protector. And I thought it was going to be all buffs this league with it, but it's not quite, because oh, I see, this is where the numbers went down. I thought I had saved this. This doesn't have any odds, it looks like, right now from the Lethal Pride here. You would want things like, you know, strength and double damage or whatever type of damage you can get. Yeah, so that's why that damage went lower, because it didn't save that or something. But anyway, it's actually not all buffed, because the Fortify changes actually hit this build decently hard, because you have to deal damage kind of to get Fortified. The Fortify stacks are based on how much damage you do. And a build with Ancestral Bond doesn't deal any damage yourself, so you won't get any Fortify. So Fortify is basically gone. I had to invest in more defense to make up for that. And luckily, you can get Mortal Conviction either on the tree or from the Tukohama shield and just run Determination, which got buffed a ton. And this is currently sitting at around 30,000 armor, which is a pretty good amount of Fizz mitigation, and I think it's probably going to end up being even tankier than before. to physical damage. And then for elemental, I grabbed some nodes in this plus max res setup, as well as the +1 fire over here, so it's at 78 all res, which isn't quite as good as having Fortify was before, but it's decently close. You'll be probably a little bit squishier to elemental, a little bit tankier to physical, and it gained, I want to say, compared to a similarly geared setup that I'd put together last week, it gained 15 or 20% more damage. So overall, about as tanky and gained some damage again. And that's also not even counting things like this Totem Mastery that's new, where you can have damage taken from your totems before you. Or the fact that this doesn't need cluster jewels. The last one relied pretty heavily on cluster jewels for a lot of things. This should be easier to get rolling, which is really nice. And especially if Delve provides a good amount of, I want to say it's encrusted fossils. One of the fossils got changed to have an increased chance of rolling attribute modifiers, which previously, outside of like essences that guaranteed, you know, flat strength, there wasn't really a good way, outside of some harvest type gimmicks that mostly got nerfed, to roll like attribute items where you want flat strength and percent strength. But if there's a fossil that's increasing both of those mods, well, now we have a way again. And if they're not too rare for people farming Delve, it should actually be pretty nice rolling gear for this finally, which would be great. But unlike the other POB, this one is pretty geared out. And you can see it's got like 10k life and almost 4 million DPS on a heavily passive totem build. You don't even need to go in to keep Fortify up anymore since you can't get it. But those are the two builds I've looked at so far. They both seem like they could be good. The War Chief one I know will be good with items, and it might be even easier to get the items this time around. But you do need like a lead sprinkler to get this part working. Otherwise, you do a either pure fizz or maybe fizz to fire conversion with the two-hander. In the meantime, if you really want to start it, I wouldn't necessarily recommend League starting this one. This is a really good like second build type thing if you want something to do some boss farming. Yeah, that's what I got so far this league. Hopefully my Spell Slinger one works out. If it does really well, there's some endgame changes to make it even tankier with like super heavy gear, and it could scale really well into some of the new heavy aspirational endgame content, where if a zone suddenly has 100% increased monster life or 200% increased monster life, the corpse detonation damage scales with that, so you kind of negate it to a heavy degree. Yeah, that's all I got. I will have POB links in the description if anyone wants to look at these, maybe try them out. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I will see you in Scourge League. Goodbye.